Welcome to another episode of Crash Chords Autographs. I, of course, am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon. Before we get into this week's episode, I, of course, as always, want to thank my patrons, Rob, MJ, and Case. You, too, can get a shout-out at the top of the show by going to patreon.com/Stormageddon and giving at the $5 level, though giving at any level is a really huge help to me in growing this and my other podcasts. So, again, patreon.com/Stormageddon. But enough of that. First, interview of the brand new year of 2020, and it is a doozy. I have the incredible Case Aiken on the show. He is a podcaster, actor, writer, and as far as multi-hyphenate goes, pretty damn talented. I've been wanting to have him on the show for a while. He is one of my fellow podcasters on the Certain Point of View network, which my other three podcasts are on. And so without further ado, I'm very excited to present my chat with the incredible Case Aiken. And yeah, so like this, I'll stitch it together and decide how much I do or don't want to keep of our preamble, because I like to get people talking, as you well know, just to make sure.
Yeah, especially for a show like this where it's like, let's have a conversation. Let's have a nice time just sort of talking about like what interests us. You know, maybe something good comes out of the preamble.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
We should definitely be relaxed.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, I've had guests who were nervous and weren't relaxed, which is fine too. Like, I know how to navigate that, but it's definitely more fun with people that I have either a repertoire with or who are just normally comfortable with talking to strangers.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, I mean, and I don't have to include this part, but you can send me more files if you want. I'm hoping to this weekend edit this, obviously, because it comes out on Tuesday, and then also edit the last thing you already sent me previously, the Doctor Who movie. Mm-hmm. So if you want to send me the next round of however many, that works for me.
Yeah, I've got one that is, it's unfortunately just one Omni in the room for three of us talking, and I listened, and you might have to, I mean, don't kill yourself if, but there's definitely one person who's like a little bit quieter. Like there's definitely like a tier of loudest, medium, and quietest in that one.
Okay. So. Yeah, it's hard. It's difficult when they're all on one track.
Yeah, I know, and that's why I'm like, don't worry about it that much, but just as a heads up.
I'll take a look and see what I can boost, because I mean, like I've done before, like if someone has chunks of conversation, I'll like pluck those pieces and make them separate tracks and boost them a bit sometimes. Like I'll just snip them out. Mm-hmm. But if it's like a lot of overlap and like intermingling conversation, it's harder to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely when it's one track, it's a much more difficult process to do anything rather than having separate people with separate audio.
Right. Literally doing anything with, and like, I don't mind having multiple tracks. I've gotten used to editing that, but definitely solo tracks. Unless you're in the same room with someone and the same distance from the microphone and the same volume, it does tend to get tricky.
Yeah.
My trick when I only have one guest in the room with me is I will push the microphone closer because I am loud as hell. So like I will err on the side of they'll probably be too quiet. And then if they also end up being loud, it usually just ends up matching my volume. So that's worked out pretty well. I appreciate you stepping in as a last-minute guest, though I've wanted to have you on to talk about everything for a while now, but it's also one of those things, I kind of said the same thing to Hans when he was on Screen Snark. It's like, I know you're good for it, so like I know when I do something like this where I'm like, hey, are you free for an hour tonight so we can record this thing at the last minute that I didn't think about? I knew you'd be a good Hail Mary for that.
Yeah, you mentioned that early on where it was like, yeah, I mean, like you just did Ben and Addie, and it's like, yeah, sometime, whatever, it's fine.
There's no video for this podcast, but you have video, and so I can see you're wearing It's a Slap t-shirt.
Yeah. It's just been my bum around the house t-shirt for this weekend.
I mean, you have a certain POV shirt for every day of the week at this point,
At this point, yeah. Especially because I have two versions of Reignite. I have the light and the dark side version.
Yes.
We're Paragon Renegade. I needed to come up with others because... So I've got notes for like let's rewatch t-shirt designs, even though they're not affiliated with us in any way. But I have nothing for another pass.
Yeah, and like like you would think that'd be a no-brainer since that show's been around so long.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of is next time we're talking about Highlander 2.
The Quickening. Yeah. I mean, also, yeah, I mean, you could do like a very kind of cartoony version of Christopher Lambert, like maybe holding a lightsaber or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm really happy to have you on the show. For those who haven't figured out by now or didn't pay attention to what they were clicking on, or their podcast happens to be on autoplay, I am talking, of course, with the incredible Case Aiken of Certain POV, acting, writing, and has too many podcast fame, which is, there's not a lot of other people I can say that to at this point, so.
Yeah, we are definitely birds of a feather, or nerds of a feather, as it were.
Yeah, and what's funny about it is like slowly others are catching up, though not on the network. For those who don't know, I have three other podcasts that aren't this one on the Certain POV network, which Case is also a part of, and was my introduction to the network through our mutual friend Jeff, who does a video game show with me. But Case now has 3 shows on that network as well. And you're talking about making another one at some point with MJ, a narrative one. So like you're coming for my title of too many podcasts.
Yeah, I mean the one with MJ, that's more just because she and I were talking about how we both liked having like narrative stuff, and like I in college had written some radio pieces. I've written a lot of stuff about like old time radio shows. Like that's a big area of like niche nerddom that I have. Like I was a big fan of The Shadow, big fan of like the old time Superman show, The Saint with Vincent Price. So like years ago, I'd like written a crossover script between Superman and The Shadow that I knew was never going to like be a thing because it's, you know, licensed property for characters from the 40s. But when we started talking about it, I was like, well, I could file off the serial numbers and I've got other stuff we could use. So for me, it's just been like rewriting things that I wrote back when I was more creative than I am now. And it was like, yeah, MJ, you're on top of things. Like, can I tag along and be like, here's some stuff I already did. So I got to give her the props. Like she's the creative push on that one.
I mean, yeah, I get that. Reignite wouldn't exist without MJ. Like, I was always of the mind of like, yeah, sure, that's a thing we could do sometime. And then when we started it around that time, she was like, so that thing we said we were going to do, here's my plan. Here's what I want to do. This is how I want to break it up. So when can we get started? And I'm like, okay, sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, we need those people because you and I are not those people.
No, I used to be when I, had hopes and dreams and wasn't tired all the time.
Oh yeah, we fit that role. Like when I stage manage a show, I've got a binder, I've got everything like laid out because I know that's the job. Like I'm there to actually have an organized file. But when I am directing the show, I'm saying stage manager, write this thing down.
Yeah, pretty much the same. Like for autographs, I mean, it's become a more casual show over time. But like in the beginning, it was very much like I was booked out months in advance. I was pre-recording and banking stuff, and I get to that when I can. But now with 3 other shows, it's kind of like unfortunately, because of also my co-hosts who are of a like mind of mine, Screen Snark and Fun and Games will never have banked episodes ever because I love my co-hosts, especially my co-host for Fun and Games, and I would say this to his face. But he is a ridiculous flake who I love, who's much better lately, I must admit. But like because of how busy we both are, also like with legit reason, he's working on a ton of different productions and other things and acting and stuff. Like the hope to get ahead of that is just. It's just not going to happen, which is fine. Because honestly, it helps keep a show like Fun and Games more current events-y. Even though the goal is not to match up with things that are coming out, we can still tie it back to releases if we time it right, which is not so bad. Screen Snark is just a cacophony of ridiculousness that is a miracle that it actually happens, and that's fine too.
Fair. I was going to say, like, because Fun and Games is sort of, while it's not news, it is of the time. It's like what's striking you guys at that moment. So it's usually like not the conversation, not the point that like comes immediately from a thing, but the tangents that you go off on from that, and not tangents in like a negative just like non sequitur kind of thing, but like
right.
Oh well, there's all this talk about Red Dead Redemption. Let's talk about the side part of that, like the underbelly, talking about the overworked employees or things like that, like
yeah,
that. So it's topical, but it's not news. and I
Right.
think that's really
it's still evergreen.
It's a really good choice because people don't need to be super up to it, but it also means that it does feel fresh every time it comes out.
Well, yeah, I mean, something I decided on pretty early, and I can actually thank my former co-host Steve, who helped host the music podcast, is that it was his idea to have as much evergreen discussions after the album reviews as possible, because then people can just tune in for that thing. And when going into a new podcast, like I have a ton of podcasts I listen to for gaming news and reviews, and honestly, like I love them so much, I couldn't even begin to try and compete, and so when me and Jeff were talking about this show, it just made sense to make more evergreen content. I mean, saying that, like talking about your shows, to shift it back onto you and your podcasts, the two newer shows, well, I guess not newer, but like the newest show for sure, the Superman show you do, Men of Steel, is absolutely something that's designed to be evergreen for the most part. Like when movies come out that are either analogs of Superman or Superman himself, you do cover it, but for the most part, you're just looking back at Superman's history and going, hey, here's a thing, let's talk about it. Was that always the goal for that?
Yeah, because the impetus for it, besides just wanting to talk about Superman, because I feel like it is not as popular a subject as it used to be. Like the real impetus was that Ben Milton and Addie Thomas would make fun of Superman all the time, especially behind the scenes when we were recording Scruffy Nerf Herders. But yeah, like Ben Milton and Addie Thomas would just like make fun of Superman while we were filming Scruffy Nerf Herders or just any kind of project. And J. Mike and I would always just be like, that's not fair. We need our own sounding board. And so it was kind of launched as that like that opposite side of the coin. And it was just sort of like, yeah, let's just have those same fun conversations we would have had in high school or wherever, where it's just like, I like this story. Fuck yeah, that's a good story. And just chat about it for, an hour-ish each time, and then move on to a different thing. So we've talked about current movies, but we've also talked about old movies. We've talked about just like eras of Superman and specific comic books. We've talked about random characters. We came up with a format where J. Mike is quizzing me on like more obscure characters, which has been really fun, and we just dropped a new one of that, and we're hoping to have like people come on and be like, yo, talk about this, to like just like spontaneously throw out character ideas.
Sure. I've really enjoyed the format of the show. I'm looking very much forward to when I finally see Shazam, because it's now on HBO, to go back to your episode from like last year in the middle of the year when the movie came out and actually finally listen to it. It's still in my queue. But like also for me, as someone who was on the Ben and Addie Who Cares About Superman bandwagon, I do have some love for the character, as we've talked at length in previous, and I've called you out on multiple podcasts at this point. I love the Superman animated series, and I love Tim Daly. And so, like, when we eventually get to recording that episode, which I know we will, at this point you're probably holding out of spite on me. The thing is like I always loved that version of Superman, right? And like the Justice League, the unlimited version of Superman, because I enjoyed Bruce Timm and I enjoyed those cartoons. So even though I didn't really necessarily like Superman, I liked that. And so, but because of you and J. Mike talking about Superman and more recent stuff and, older stuff and older comics and like the radio show, which I love to watch, or the old black and white show, rather, when I love to watch. So like those things have kind of given me a reappreciation of some of Superman's past, because it's very easy with the modern interpretation of Superman, especially Henry Cavill's movies, not as much to his fault. It's very easy to hate Superman now because there's just not been a lot of quality. But if you really look, there's still a ton of stuff. And this podcast has been a great way for me to discover a lot of that.
Yeah, I think that's the most exciting part of it, which is that there is so much stuff. Like I own the DVD special collection that they did after Superman Returns came out, and I realized I hadn't actually watched the Donner cut of Superman 2, which was a huge thing when it came out, and I was just like, oh, I just never had time, and I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm gonna watch it because we're gonna talk about it at some point. And there's the old TV shows. The DC Universe app has been great for us because we have access to all this like random material, such as the New Adventures of Superman cartoon from the 70s, which I didn't even realize was its own thing until I was like looking through, and it's like, oh, that's what that thing was called. I thought it was just like a weird spin-off of Super Friends. Like, oh, there we go. Okay, cool. Like there's so much material to go and find because the character is so old as far as like modern concepts of like pop culture go.
Yeah, I would say it's safely he's one of the top 3 superheroes, right? Like him, Batman, and Spider-Man are probably the most popular within the popular culture. There are other superheroes that are better or worse, whatever, but like I think the 3 of them are pretty ubiquitously known at this point.
Yeah, like I sometimes get into this conversation of like, so how popular is Superman the comic book character? Because I feel like pop culture Superman is huge. Like everyone knows the basics. To the point where, like, oftentimes shorthand for, oh, we're going to do a superhero version of X, Y, or Z character, like Doug Funny when he's dreaming, or Bugs Bunny when he does, some shtick about what he would do if he had superpowers. They take iconography from Superman and appropriate it as a way of being like, yep, that's superhero as a general concept. But, like, the comics have had, like, all kinds of ups and downs. It's had turns of creative teams that have been lauded and those that have been lambasted. Currently, Brian Michael Bendis, who is a writer I have a lot of weird feelings about, is the writer and is doing a lot of interesting stuff. I'm actually a big fan of what he's doing, despite the fact that I don't love everything he's touched.
Right.
But, and like that's causing a sales bump. But like I have consistently had Superman books in my pull box at comic book stores, or at least like Superman characters. Like I used to be a huge fan of the Carl Kiesel and Tom Grummett Superboy run from the 90s. So that was like my gateway into like the larger Superman family. But I'm not sure how many people are really buying it. But he's got a lot of books. He's got more books than most characters, like that are like quote unquote Superman books, as opposed to him showing up in a thing. So I'm just always curious, like, what are the real numbers? Like, I'm sure you could find it. And how many of those people, like, how much of that sale is people just looking for, oh, this is what the comic books that are coming out are, like dentists for their, like, living, or, like, their waiting rooms or stuff like that, versus, like, actual big fans that are reading the story arcs as they go. And I'm curious, and I would love to see it, because I feel like for a character to support that many books, he's got to have that like that seed of popularity that you don't hear talked about a lot, because like fucking everyone loves Batman and the Joker and like Wonder Woman now with like especially with the recent movie, that's a big thing, and Spider-Man, people love spider iconography, and you can combine like your nerdy superhero stuff with like sort of like a more goth thing with like spider webs and like like a little bit of horror elements, or obviously Batman has the same thing, and like Iron Man and Captain America and Thor and all like with the movies are really popular now, but like Superman is well known by like people who are into the S, and like you can buy that merch. But I don't see a lot of people going like the next step. Like I feel like
right.
It's a little bit less of a point of pride in his fandom, and it's rare to see someone who's like a big promoter. And so I want to be that, because I feel like if other people join with me in that conversation, then we'll all get really excited and enthusiastic. And I think the best part about like the property is that in the end, if we're all like, it doesn't need a villain for it to be good. It can also just be about a guy doing the right thing and us all being really excited about that. And eventually we'll all find our way into the sun. And like, that's like a cool concept.
For sure. Yeah. When the podcast was still in its early days, I recommended it to a friend of mine, because he was just a diehard Superman fan on a level I'd not seen before. Like, he had different Superman t-shirts, but like one was the classic S, one was the S from the black and white show, one was the S from the old animated show.
Oh, that's awesome.
Clearly, like, he had a shirt for every day of the week, more or less, and more. And so, like, and they were all mostly just the Superman logos with different coloring based on whatever version of Superman it was. And so I definitely sent him the link once you guys started the show, because I was like, this is a man who will, if not appreciate the entire show, will at least appreciate what the show is doing and listen to some of the episodes. And it's funny, too. I feel like we're at a point now in culture where podcasting... So I made this joke the other day, is like, podcasting is now our generation's do you want to start a band? Is do you want to start a podcast? Because I feel like everyone either is doing one or wants to do one. It's way more accessible. When I first started back in my day, there were more hoops to jump through for starting a podcast. But now with all the different hosting sites that make things easily available and like easy to upload, and like, you know, like I'm still doing the uploads for autographs through like a file management program and like an FTP server, whereas like everything else on the Certain POV network, it's all through Libsyn. It's all done in the background. Like, it's oversimplified to a great degree. And so it's really interesting to see how many people are doing podcasts and how easy it is to start new ones. And your background is sort of radio, but you also did a lot of theater and acting and writing, right?
Yeah. I mean, so I always say that I am the worst audio engineer of the CPOV family. Like I'm just not an audio editor. That has never been where like my interest was. I always liked radio, and I wrote radio stuff, but like music is not as integral to my life as it is for some people, such as yourself. Like, like I didn't really think about music until I had a car, and like it was like riding with the radio on. I was like, oh, okay, I'm thinking about these bands. It just wasn't like my key area of focus. And
right.
So when I got through college, in college I started dabbling with like video editing software, and a lot of that was doing like music videos, like anime music videos, because I was a big Dragon Ball Z fan, and pretty much every song ever made has had a Dragon Ball Z music video made to it. And I was like, I think there's like 3 or 4 that haven't been. I'm going to do them. So I did Beat It by Michael Jackson.
Oh my God, are these available online? Like, are they on the YouTubes?
That one definitely is not, or at least it's not by a version that was hosted by me. This was well pre-YouTube and a few computers before we got to that point, because I had some crash issues in college.
Yeah.
So I don't think that one's available. There is stuff that I've edited available for my old YouTube account, which is a Quetzalcoatl 5.
Nice.
And that's like, I've got like Conan the Barbarian, like the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, synced up to Faint by Linkin Park, or I Collapse by Eminem, set up to the fight between Achilles and Hector in Troy, which I was actually stand by as being, I'm very proud of that one, because I got all these like flashbacks to their encounters leading up to the fight, but the actual like frame of the fight, or the fight is the frame of the song, and it's all about Hector trying to stand up to Achilles.
That's amazing, and I'm going to find it.
I'll send you the link. We can put it in the doobly-doo in the show notes.
Yeah, exactly.
So I like started with video editing, because I had I was a film minor, and I was trying to become a screenwriter, because I saw that as the easier goal to explain to people than being like, and someday I'd like to write comic books. Like that at the time, it was like, yeah, I'll try to go and do like film stuff. And so I would like edit videos for that. I started to teach myself how to do camera work and Photoshop. And Photoshop I really took to. Camera work I am okay at. And I did like a bit of videography work when I first moved to New York. And then just tried to like shoot some YouTube series, and decided I'm not a big fan of video editing. It's a lot of time on projects, and it takes a long time to really feel like you have an outcome. Like, I'll do it. I'm sure that I'll come back around to it at some point in my life, but I got burned by a few too many projects that either were half filmed and then I could just never finish it because we didn't have the footage and I could never get the actors, or ones that I just got burned out by like too much demand professionally. But like, that's where I had like a little audio experience, because like, you have to like do the audio for the video you're working on. And then flash forward to years later, I'm helping out with a Star Trek fan film, and I've moved back to the Maryland area at this point, and Ben Milton asked me to come on the podcast to promote it, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, podcasting. I like podcasts. Podcasts are fun. I've been listening to podcasts since like Smodcast and like all the CNET like tech podcasts back in like 2008. Cool. And then very slowly I started like helping out, and eventually had my own like spin-off shows, and that's where I like actually had to like learn kind of how to do it. But as with everything, it's been like learn by doing, and I'm sure there's some like glaringly obvious like beginner's mistakes that I just have never taught myself how to do. Yeah,
but like in the modern tech era, like that's how you learn, right? Like I became a pretty good audio engineer, and that's not because of the one college course I took that was barely a college course. Like, it's because I started a podcast with two knuckleheads who definitely didn't know anything about editing. Well, that's not true. One of them did. And he ended up taking over the editing because he was so obsessive. But, like, he taught me a lot, too. And so now my meticulousness with editing only comes from doing it as long as I have. But also, that said, as you know, having been a guest now, I think, on every show I've done, right? Yeah. This will be the last show.
This is the hat trick.
This is the hat trick. You'll know that all of my shows, for the most part, are really conversational because I don't want to edit that much. And also, I think it just breeds a better conversational environment. But that said, like listening to Another Pass, which is your movie rewriting podcast, I guess is the best shorthand. And you can explain a little more. That one, depending on the conversation, requires a lot of editing or not because of how the conversation goes, but more because there's a flow to the conversations, because you don't shorthand your podcast. You let people talk. If people talk for 2 hours, it's a 2-hour episode that you might cut down a little, but for the most part, like you like the length of conversation. You don't mind long-windedness in it.
I have cut out stuff on that show because it was too tangential.
Right.
I've cut out stuff where, I mean, obviously there's technical issues that pop up, and because I sort of let people go, and I myself go, on long tears, I try to cut down as much of the gaps in between, or the time it takes to like get to your actual thesis. If someone has to like say a couple of times a thing to get what their actual point is, I'm happy to let them do that, and then I'm also happy to take them out, or take out all those attempts, so that they can sound as concise and knowledgeable as possible, because I want everyone to sound good when we do it. So I try at least to make it crisp and clean and easy to follow, while at the same time not preventing my guests or myself from being able to, fire off the cuff.
Yeah, I mean, what I also love about Another Pass, especially the recent run of episodes, first of all, some of the more recent episodes have been so well edited. It's pristine.
It's crazy. It's just like it's like some avatar of mental energy has taken over where my hands used to be, and now it's just done well, as opposed to whatever I was doing.
I'm making jokes because I'm helping Case edit Another Pass at the moment. But what I wanted to say, actually, though, about episodes even before I came on to help you out with that, because you do a great job editing too, is like, even when you've made mistakes or when you've misjudged something, if it can be played for comedy or for better discussion, you leave it in. Like the fact that you have 3 episodes with Brett and Sam of Let's Rewatch, because literally the first one was both of you came together with the wrong movies, still talked about one of those movies, and then did the episode you set out to do. Like, I think that, like, it helps that I know these folks. If you don't know the Let's Rewatch podcast, which you should, it's a wonderful group of folks who rewatch movies that are at least 10 years old or older to see if they hold up. And they do it live on the show to a degree. They record pre-watching the movie, pause together, watch the movie, and then get back on the horn right away and record their reaction. And it's brilliantly done. But knowing Brett and Sam and knowing the kind of delightful, sweet humans that they are, the fact that you guys got so far in before the mistake was realized and you just kept it all, I think that's brilliant. That's why I come to podcasting, because it's genuine. It's real people, and you play it up a little, but like, it was pretty genuine, and that made for a better episode.
Yeah, I'm never afraid to have egg on my face. Like, I might be afraid to let people understand just how much I stutter or say but in terms of the broader, like, yeah, no, I'm a fool. Like, I am not the guy out there making movies, so I'm more than happy to acknowledge the fact that, like, I am not the pro in the scenario, and definitely if I have a screw up, well, I'll try to own it.
Yeah. I mean, also what's fun about the show is the framework and the fact that it starts with discussing the movie, whatever the movie of the day is, and then pitching how you would improve it, or if it's something like Die Hard or a few other movies where you've done, they just barely work. Like, they could have not worked, but they made it. They did work, but they had a lot of hardships. Like, that's just kind of more than just describing how that could have happened, and than just appreciating the movie, which I think is just as interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so both of those came from the like what you were saying in terms of having like a conversational podcast. Another pass came from a very well regarded series of conversations I had with your Fun and Games co-host Jeff Moonen while we were working at a theater company, where we would talk about Star Wars movies, and we talked about everything because the two of us, if you put us in a room together, we will pass the time.
Yes,
but we would talk about the Star Wars movies and the prequels specifically, and try to like pinpoint, like, all right, let's say you're the producer for episode 3 and episode 3 only. How do you make it work? And that mental exercise was really fun. And when I started working with CPOV, it was like, hey, this is like, these are conversations that stand out to me, 2 or 3 years later at the time, where I felt it was good content. I still talk about a conversation I had about this thing. Why don't we try it as a podcast episode? And then they were great. And that was like, let's just make this a show. So, like, those are conversations I want to have, like, with people I want to have it with. Like, I'm always excited to meet and chat with new people. It's been a great opportunity to talk to people who I am aware of online but haven't actually had a chance to meet, or people who I've spoken to briefly but would love to have more time actually, like, getting to know. And it's a good vehicle for that, where, because we can kind of just share an intellectual thought about a piece of art and assess it, like nuts and bolts. And then on top, like, to sort of like diversify the show, it was like, well, let's also talk about movies that like didn't do, or didn't need it, like movies that like pulled it off, like movies that almost failed, so we can sort of set a contrast. And that's a more recent thing, but it was like, yeah, we can do it like every 5th episode. It's a good format. There's a lot of movies that we can like look back on and be like, man, that almost was an abysmal failure. And we started with Star Wars, the original movie that was like edited back to life after the fact by Marshall Lucas. So I mean, there you go. And we to show an example of like, yeah, like a movie can almost fail and actually write itself. And so these are the ways that we wish that other movies could write themselves.
For sure, yeah. Like, I'd thought about bringing, and this will go out in the ether now, we can talk about it again later, but like Wonder Woman, for example, the new movie, not the newest one, because Wonder Woman 84, which has a banging fucking trailer, like, just perfectly edited, perfect music. But anyway, like, that first movie, while it had a lot of good going for it, because of the legacy up to that point, could have tanked. It could have been terrible. But it didn't. I feel like it pulled it off. It wasn't a perfect movie, but like the performances were great. The music was great. Like, it was shot well. Like, but leading up to that, and so like those kinds of examples, like you said with the original Star Wars, like with Die Hard, I think it is important to look at these movies that we now laud as legends and remember, hey assholes, they weren't always that way. Like the current Star Wars discourse, which we're not going to get into because we have better things to do. Like, it's good to look back at that old Star Wars movie and go, this like, it's a legend now, but it wasn't. It was people thought it was going to fail. Nobody even took it seriously before it actually released. Like, it could have been terrible, and it's easy to forget that because we put movies on such a high pedestal now, especially with the MCU and the DCUO or DCEU or whatever it's called these days. Like, it's just, and Star Wars, which is a franchise now. It's very easy to forget that these things sometimes were at one point a single thing that could have failed and happened to not.
Yeah. It's, like every movie is a huge collaboration of effort from lots and lots of different people. And the finished product is, there might be a particularly controlling director or a producer that has a lot of influence on it, but it's still a collaborative work. And I think it is remiss to discount movies that clearly had a lot of strong thoughts going into it, a lot of like good effort going into it, just because it didn't stick the landing. Or even if they did stick the landing, but it could have been like a little bit better. I think that like, it's because like the goal is not to bitch about movies or to like shit on anything. The goal is to be positive and talk about like creative or constructive criticism.
For sure. I mean, it's one of my favorite things I think about the Certain POV network is this idea that like we can talk about all these things that we love and still and not agree necessarily and still have a good conversation. I mean, my favorite thing to point out, because I like to pick on him even when he's not here, but Ben Milton and I don't always see eye to eye. In fact, we argue often about things that we don't agree with. But the difference is Ben's never saying that I'm less intelligent or, it never comes to blows, as it were. It's always a fun conversation. And if we can't find common ground to agree, then we separate. And that's fine. Like, I don't think there's enough conversation on the internet. And it does seem like that's the ethos of Certain POV, right? Is creating, I hate this word, content that is approachable and also not aggressively like gatekeepy. Like even Reignite could have been very gatekeepy because it's a specific franchise, but we created it in a way before we were even a part of Certain POV, and I think it's why you guys wanted us to be a part of it, is this is the thing that we're talking about with love, and even if you haven't played it, we're giving you a way to follow along and engage in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I will, to pull back the curtain a little bit. So we hadn't listened to any of the episodes of Reignite yet. I think only the first one had like just dropped when we first approached you about coming on. It was that there was this passion, and the format, like the elevator pitch was strong. It was like, oh yeah, like a book club style for a video game. That's great. Like, especially a popular game that like was certainly in the wheelhouse of Certain POV interests. Like I was a huge BioWare fan before that, just for the previous generation of games, like Knights of the Old Republic and Jade Empire. That sounded like such a great idea. And, as I point out, you guys got me to play through the Mass Effect games, and it was such a great experience of 2019 that like when people have asked me my favorite parts of this past year, I'm like, I played the Mass Effect trilogy and got to experience a thing that was well regarded, but like that I had just missed, and got to like really enjoy it and appreciate it.
Thank you. I think that creating that companionship was the goal. And again, all MJ's brainchild. Like, I'm along for the ride. I'm the idiot who doesn't take notes and barely knows what he's talking about. MJ runs that ship. But like, I think what's also brought us closest friends, because we predominantly for the first year or so had an internet friendship, and we only met in person much later. And like, then we started to hang out more. And like, I came for MagFest last year. I unfortunately missed it this year. But like, I think we have a common, we're both relatable in the fact that we both want to engage in conversation that's fun for everybody. We don't want to have a conversation at the detriment of others involved. And I think that shines through for sure in your podcasting. I mean, shifting gears to the other show that you do, which is a Star Wars D20 podcast, the Scruffy Nerf Herders, which, because of course it's called the Scruffy Nerf Herders. What else would you call it? You're treating it's clear that you're treating the DMing as like you're a story writer, right? It shows that you're flexing your writing muscle, but it's never designed in a way that if someone who doesn't play any D20 games would go, oh, well, I don't understand how this works, so I don't want to listen. Like, the stories are curated and the podcast is edited in a way that it feels like an adventure, that you can get some of the other details of the gameplay stuff, but for the most part, it's just designed to be an adventure.
Yeah, so with like Scruffy Nerf Herders, that was me trying to figure out the sort of mystery of what is properly DMing, because I had only recently gotten into it, and also wanted to do something that was like fun Star Wars, and like sort of like play around with my ideas of it, and like bring that all together and sort of like make that a podcast. Like, I knew that there were other like live play or real play games out there. I was a big fan of one called, at the time, was called Drunks and Dragons. They've since renamed themselves Greetings Adventurers. So I can't say that I'm like coming from scratch, but
right.
It was figuring out my DM style, and it's still different than if I'm running a game, because there are things like puzzles and fighting, like stuff that's like game mechanics that I find has a hard time to translate. For one thing, theater of the mind, and for another, to an audio listener. And so it has sort of become like, all right, we're putting together a story, and you guys are going to make some choices that are going to be different. There's a little bit of rails in that I've got to like continue something, and if we're going to try to like build towards stuff, like I need to have at least like some big plot stuff that's going to be controlling like the trajectory, but I don't want to rob people of agency either. And like the times where we've kind of needed to stream like to barrel down and like we got to get through this if we're going to get to this plot point by X date or something like that. Those have been times where I felt like it suffered. The general goal of just like, yeah, we're going to exist in the Star Wars universe and come up with weird shit. Like that's such a great idea. Like why doesn't everyone do this all the time? Because like if you like a intellectual property that has been contributed to by so many people, such as Star Wars, like you can extrapolate lots of weird concepts and have people sort of invest themselves in it. Like I had a lot of fun doing a bazaar early on where it was inside a former clone, or not a clone, the Trade Federation, like the big donuts with the donut hole in the center.
Yeah.
It had been converted into like an atoll. But the gravity centers were all like messed up, and so people kept on like walking around on different walls, and so there were like shops and different like on different axes from like what the major like throughways were, and it was like fun because like those are things you can do in Star Wars because they established they have artificial gravity and they have, you know, ships of this shape and design, and it's like, all right, so what are all the crazy ways I can do things with this, and then make that a setting that literally they could never do on a mundane or a like fantasy based story. Like this only exists in sci-fi. Go have the conversation you want to have, but just like give me the opportunity to like give you weird stuff to like work with. And that was a lot of fun. Like Ben ended up like hot wiring the security drones and was like controlling them, but had to like control himself at the same time. And like, you know, there was like lots of weirdness that happened. And of course that ended up being the one where they walked into the brothel that was run by a Mon Calamari. That was I'm wearing the shirt for at the moment. And they always reference the shaved Wookiee prostitute. But again, that was just like, how weird can we go? Let's go weird. Okay.
Sure. I mean, it's definitely awesome when people let you play in that space. I remember one of the early Star Wars D20 games I did, my friend Matt was DMing, and I was playing a bounty hunter droid, and I stayed behind on the ship because I didn't necessarily hate my companions, but I didn't like them either. So I stayed on the ship, and then they got attacked by stormtroopers, and they were all standing under the ship's like door, like the drop to walk off the exit ramp. And so I hacked the ship and rolled something and got a natural 20. And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to drop the ship door on these stormtroopers and kill them." And he said, "You do that. They died. You make an entrance." And it was just, you know, that kind of thing is just so much fun and not a thing you get to see a ton in the actual Star Wars properties. So being able to do that and like listening to the show, I've jumped around a lot and I've listened to most of it, but like, it's clear that you let them kind of run wild a little bit. I sometimes feel a little bad for J. Mike because the quieter of all of you, it's clear that sometimes he kind of just lets it run, like lets them run out of gas and then goes, "Okay, here's what we're actually going to do." Like, if you guys are done.
Yeah. So someone once summed it up as my DMing style as being a chicken style of DMing, where I will push a scene as far as I can against a person to see who breaks first, and it's very much like apparent in Nerf Herders. It's even more so in other games that I've run, like home games, because I don't have to worry about someone listening in afterwards.
Sure.
Where you can just kind of like go a bit insane. You know, I had a lot of fun with in other games with like mind switching and like cursed items that the party ended up using to like torment each other, akin to, but not the same as like putting whipped cream in a sleeping person's hand kind of things.
Right. Sure.
Yeah. But just to sort of see, all right, like this thing exists. How do we have fun with it? And for me, part of that fun is to see if I can goad them into doing something crazy. And for the people who are trying to stay on point, sometimes they have to remember that sometimes the point is we're going to have some crazy shit that happens up until we arrive at destination B. So maybe just embrace it.
Sure. Yeah, totally. I'm curious. So, you've been podcasting a little while. You have some other stuff in the works. What is it that you're looking to get out of podcasting now? You've been doing it for a while. Are you looking to build more shows because you want to have no free time, or is it because, or are you looking to like alter or shift or grow the show? I mean, we're all looking to grow the shows we're working on, but like, are you looking to focus on what you have now and kind of build them out, or are you still looking to expand and make more new things?
I think each show is its own animal. For that, I still see myself as a writer. I still have stuff that I'm working on. And for Another Pass, it's kind of an exercise for me to kind of dust off the cobwebs and like look for my own blind spots. If I look at a movie and I'm like, oh, they made this mistake, and then I realize that I'm working on a script with a similar thing, that's really helpful for me. But in the meantime, it's kind of, like I said, it's a good exercise. It's fun to do, and it's been a good excuse to talk to people that I wouldn't get the chance to talk to otherwise. And like, so in that scenario, that's the most personally rewarding show. Nerf Herders, I really do feel like we're working really hard at creating like a fun Star Wars story. And while it'd be interesting to try to like do something with it, I don't know what I could do with it, like without changing a lot. It's so innately Star Wars that I don't think you could really do that much without like losing either the property or having to like go back and like reinvent the franchise from scratch. And, it's a goofy kind of thing, so it's not like I'm going to pretend it's like high art or anything, but I think it's a solid adventure. Like, the first 50 episodes is one giant campaign. There's a couple breakpoints in there where, like, the setting shifts a bit, but it's one story with, like, the same crew the whole time. And, like, that I think is great. And I like, when talking to people who are just, like, enthusiastic fans, it's like, hey, check out this podcast and listen to that story. But I think that's like the fanfic author in me right there, where like I know that that's not going to be a thing. Like that's not going to be a 50 Shades of Grey, like it gets picked up into a book. But it might be a thing where if I'm working on something else, like I want it to be sort of like my 8-bit theater to eventually I'm going to have my Atomic Robo.
Sure.
Where like this is the free thing that people can check out. That's like a lot of those creative ideas, a lot of the stuff I'm trying to do, and maybe even like a better articulation of it, or at least of like what my sort of like sensibilities are. That is just out there and it's raw, but it is at the same time like consumable and easy to get to, and like I said, fun. And then Men of Steel is just having a good time. It's an excuse to like go back and like look at stuff that life gets in the way of. It's really easy to fall down a rabbit hole of just like looking at YouTube videos, God forbid, like the same YouTube videos you've already seen, and at the same time miss out on movies or shows or not participate in things that you really should have. Like that's why I'm really happy that I played through the Mass Effect games, because of you guys. And Men of Steel is doing some of that for me. It's it is a little bit of a lower stress show than the other two. The production, I don't want to say production quality, but the amount of editing time is much lower. When I am editing the episodes, I'm not as anal retentive about the myriad ums and false starts to sentences or anything. It's just there to be like that was a cool thing. Yeah, that was a cool thing, and just talk about it. And it'd be nice to have it gain more listeners so that I could have those kind of conversations with like bigger and bigger people in the industry. But sure, that's like that would be a perk more than anything else. And like I said, it's more just to like all of it's kind of just to keep me fresh and practiced on things that I do care about, even if I'm not working as much towards that in my day job. But there's only so many times I can be like, yeah, I'm working on a script, until I actually have to finally sit down and write it. And if a lot of people have heard it, eventually they're going to start asking me about it, and then I actually have to do it. So,
that's true.
It helps me stay honest and honest about a bunch of different types of things.
Yeah, I mean, I relate to that. The reason I've performed on stage at all at the burlesque shows that I've been a part of, even with sans stripping, is because listeners have been like, well, you said you're going to do this, and you always bring this up. Are you going to do it? And so, a thing that I don't know that I would do again, but I did it once, and I did it once because I said I would, and people held me to it, which is, I think, a really, it's why I've become a Twitch affiliate and why I stream, is because I kept talking about it, and then I met folks at MagFest last year who were like, dude, you're overthinking it, just do it, who cares? Like, no, there are no rules, just do it. And sometimes you need someone to tell you that. And again, it's this conversation we have both with listeners and with other podcasters that you kind of go, oh yeah, that thing that I thought I couldn't do, I can do it because that person's doing it. And like, we're at similar stations, we have similar gear, like I can do that thing. And like, that's just been really fascinating to me to see happen. Before we wrap up, I have a pretty cliche question. Now that you have 3 shows under your belt, you've been podcasting for many years, and you've been producing podcasts to some degree across the network, helping folk, guesting on shows, being on other shows. What is one piece of advice you'd give to people who want to start a podcast that they might not know or have thought of that you've learned as you continue to grow and create these shows?
The biggest thing that I have found is be prepared for the massive amount of time it takes to both find a rhythm and then actually get through podcasting. Like, speaking as a person who does edit a lot of his own shows, and yes, Matt, you have helped me out a lot on Other Pass, but it's very easy to get sucked into an episode and find that you spent your whole week working on one, which sucks if you have 2 others that are coming out that same week.
Yeah.
So I would say both banking episodes is important and figuring out what your editing process is. If you can do it in stages, that's awesome. I have a hard time doing it, but you can definitely not multitask while working on it, because if you're actually listening to a podcast, you can't really be reading something else or doing anything like that. So just be prepared for that time sink. And so that's I like bank episodes when you can. Figure out a schedule that you can actually do, and not just one that you can do when you're sprinting, like one that you can fall back to as well. Like, it wouldn't be impossible for someone with a chunk of free time to bang out like 3 or 4 episodes and be like, I can keep this pace up. But it is a very different story to keep that pace up year after year. Like, this is my 4th year of doing Another Pass and Nerf Herders, and you figure out shortcuts, you figure out ways to get ahead of yourself when it's slow, because you won't be able to when it's busy. But just understand your schedule and not just, I can achieve that, but like I can do it even when stuff is going on that's sort of getting in the way.
Yeah, I mean that's legit. That makes sense. My now retired Crash Chords podcast was weekly, and we reviewed an album every week. The recording and listening process took 5 hours every week, and then there was editing, and so I get that. Like, I've had thoughts when I bank enough of autographs to go, oh, this could be a weekly show. I could do this every week. And then I look at the alternating weeks when I have 3 shows coming out. Although, thankfully, I don't do all of that editing. I do only some of it. I think that understanding your schedule and understanding what you're capable of makes a lot of sense. I will definitely piggyback on your suggestion of banking episodes. If you are making a podcast, bank 10 episodes. It sounds like a lot, but that way, if you could go 10 weeks without, or 20 weeks without recording anything, but also it gives you the freedom to edit the structure how you want, change the order of where you're airing things if it's evergreen. Like, just give yourself that room. The worst thing you can do is launch a podcast and have nothing banked, because then you'll be scrambling probably for months before you get ahead of it.
Yeah, especially when your show is first coming out, it's difficult to talk to people about a thing that isn't in existence yet. Yeah. Like, for me, now that I'm, like I said, year 4 of Another Pass, I can approach people and be like, I have a show, here's the website, here's all the episodes I've done, would you like to come on? And that's an easier conversation than when it was like, I have a show coming out, someday it's going to come out, would you want to sit down and talk to me? It's a very different kind of thing. And so when it's first coming out, even if it's like I'm going to record a segment or something like that, if it's a news show, but you want to be able to like talk to people who know something about some sort of subject matter, like an interview kind of thing, just to be a segment to fill up some of the time of the episode, that's not a bad way to do it. Anything you can do to, like we were saying, get ahead of the process so that even if you're only doing the bumpers, like that's a lot easier than doing the whole episode 2 days before it's actually supposed to go up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I used to try and work the bumpers and the closings into the show, and while I still have something that I have everyone say at the end of the show, like for the most part I'd much rather record those separately because it allows me to also come back to what I did with kind of like a fresh brain after having lived it, so to speak. Because while I don't listen to every episode that I do, I listen enough to edit it, and I skim through it to hear the highlights because I genuinely love every guest I bring on the show. Like, that's why I bring them on. Even if they're people who I've never met before that a publicist sends me, like, if I don't like their work, I'm not going to bring them on to talk about it because I don't want to. It doesn't mean their work's bad, but I don't want to have to lie or say I like it or pretend or like, all that stuff because the show isn't at a level where I need to do that, right? I still have the full creative control. Well, Case, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate you stepping in. Before I have you sign us off, tell everyone listening where they can find you on the internet and the stuff that you do.
Yeah, so as we spent most of this time talking about, I do a lot of podcasts. They are all part of the Certain POV family, so you can find all of that at certainpov.com. Again, the 3 shows are Another Pass, which is a movie analysis podcast. For the most part, we're talking about movies that didn't do a perfect job when they first came out and tried to have creative and constructive conversations about what could have been done to improve it. Could be a good movie, could have been a bad movie. The goal is to come up with something better at the end without it being just like I said, a shit session. Scruffy Nerf Herders is our Star Wars D20 game. I am the dungeon master for that and the editor for the show. Right now we are in a sequence of mini arcs for people, but the first 50 episodes was like one big story with the main crew, and now we're kind of jumping around, but we are working towards a larger story, so if you stay tuned, you will be rewarded. And lastly, we have Men of Steel, which is our Superman podcast, and it's mostly appreciation. It's here's a fun movie. Let's talk about how much fun it was. Or here's a great story arc. Let's talk about that. But all that's at certainpov.com. There you got a link to our Discord server. You can come chat with me and with everyone from Certain POV. We really enjoy it. If we can have a good conversation online or over a voice call for some of these shows or whatever, great. Because like half the goal I think for me with Certain POV is just to engage with people and find out what they're thinking about all these different properties and subjects. So please come chat there, certainpov.com.
Awesome. Yeah, I will say if this doesn't pitch you on our Discord, I don't know what will. We have Star Wars discourse that isn't toxic or belittling. It is actually genuine, and I don't know anywhere else on the internet that isn't face-to-face conversations where I've found that. So if you like Star Wars, that's a good reason to join us. Again, Case, thank you for being on the show. You've become a very good friend, and I love all the stuff that you're doing, and I'm glad that you were able to take the time. The last thing I do is have everybody say our sign-off for the show, which is music is life and life is good. So if you could say that and wrap us up, we will go on into that good night.
Absolutely. Again, Matt, thank you for having me on. Music is life, and life is good.
That's it for this episode of Crash Chords Autographs. Our theme music is by Michael Kill. Our logo was designed by Case Aiken and Joey Amons. If you liked the show, please rate and review us on iTunes and Facebook. You'll help us reach more listeners. Questions, comments, or guest recommendations? Email matt.storm@crashchords.com or hit us up on Twitter @CrashChordsWeb. Thanks for listening.
Hi, this is Victor Devon, and I am the host of We Burlesque, the podcast. Every Monday, I talk to fabulous denizens of nightlife, including burlesque performers, both seasoned and new to the form, drag performers, performance artists, DJs, and artists who make up their respective scenes. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Please visit WeBurlesque.com to check out episode recaps and see all the formats available. And remember that music is life. Life is good.